I'm constantly auditing reward for effort. And if it's balanced, or if my reward is higher, I know we're in a good situation. If the effort outweighs the reward, you have to constantly think about like, well, is this reward leading to something else that it could be attached to or not? That's kind of the way that I look at it.
I've been reaching out over and over and over and over again. Nothing good's coming my way. And I don't see the reason why. You need somebody to take a look at what you're doing, and so they can bring up that red flag. Interesting. Okay.
If you find yourself having trouble getting conversations with people at a higher level, so maybe senior devs, maybe engineering manager, whatever may be in that hierarchy, get some with the people on your same level.
You can join cohorts that Danny puts on. You can join 100 devs with me. Like, you can join folks that are actively practicing these things so you get better at these skills.
If you find yourself having trouble getting conversations with people at a higher level, so maybe senior devs, maybe engineering manager, whatever may be in that hierarchy, get some with the people on your same level.
In your profile, look like someone that's hireable. Have a good background. Have a good title. Have activity that shows you're a real person.
What's going on, everyone? We are back with another one. This is the Programming Podcast, and I'm one of your co-hosts. My name is Danny Thompson. I'm the Director of Technology at a company called This Labs.
And I'm Noel, Managing Director of Engineering at a wonderful nonprofit called Resilient Coders, and wonderful community member at 100 Devs. And before we jump into it, I just wanted to say a huge thank you to everyone that's been listening. This has been wilder than we ever expected. People are coming back week after week to ask questions, participate in the community, to get help on their job search, everything, to learn the latest and greatest. And we see the likes, we see the comments, we see all the engagement online. When you're typing in programming on Spotify, our faces are showing up. That's wild. My mom is sending me texts saying, good job. That doesn't happen that often. So thank you. And I really appreciate each person that takes a second to leave a like, to leave a comment, to leave a rating, to leave a follow. Like, it really adds up. It really does mean the world to us. We're putting so much time, energy, effort into making this a spot that you can come back to week after week to help yourself in your career, to learn cool things, to meet cool guests. And we're just really appreciative that you're on the journey with us. And thank you for all the support so far.
Echo the same thing. Thank y'all. Honestly, it's been a wild ride. The fact that we're ranking up these charts the way that we are, when we look at the listenership and how much the average medium time is for a video or a podcast episode, is just mind blowing. Like, I just keep going back to an overall, like, I'm so happy that we're doing something right. And I'm just grateful that we're able to shed, some light and joy and value for people every single Thursday. And hopefully we can continue doing this and keep expanding upon it and making sure that we're doing things right. And I will say, I love seeing the comments. Like, I shared some comments the other day with Leon where you could definitely tell people are binging it because, like, they leave a comment on every single video. And we got people that spend a whole weekend right now binging the entire weekend for each episode. It's like, that gets us fired up. It gets me fired up. It gets me coming in here thinking, like, we have to make sure we bring our best foot forward every single time. And we definitely collaborate and brainstorm before we do these things, just to make sure that your time is, I believe in value for time. I say that before every meetup. And so if you're coming here and you're spending your Thursday morning, afternoon, evening, or the weekend with us, we got to make sure it's worth that time. And hopefully we continue to keep honoring that. And I know if we don't, it'll never be due to a lack of effort. It'll just be to some external factor. And hopefully we can keep our end of the deal going. And I'm pretty confident we will. So let's kind of jump into today's episode. Make sure we give them value for their time, right? And so today's episode, in a nutshell, is going to be why you haven't gotten hired. That's basically the way that I could put it. And the culmination of comments and messages on Twitter and LinkedIn, etc., kind of brought this one together. And essentially the idea has been, there are people that say, I've done everything right. I've been applying. No one calls back. And as we speak right now, we are in week 3 of our cohort that we're doing in Dallas, Texas, right? And it's remote. Like, we have people that are not from Dallas that are part of the cohort, right? And so logistically, it just kind of makes sense because for me, my goal is to kind of bring in amazing team leads and give people the opportunity to lead a team that maybe they never had before. And for the team leads, I'll even share some of the conversations that we're having, some of the team leads are like, I've never led a team before. I'm very nervous. I'm freaking out. Like, how do I know I'm doing a good job here? And they're like, some of the people on the team know a technology better than I know it, right? And it's like, how am I a team lead of them? And then I have to remind them of something. Like, I remember my very first job in tech, there was a tool that we used that was called BCC, or it was a tool from Oracle. We use Java on the back end, right? And so you'd store code there. It's a nightmare of a tool, just being honest with you. And I remember looking to my manager and I said, hey, I don't know how to do this. Do you know how to use this tool? He said, I've never touched it. And it's like, you're my manager. But he's not there to be a technical influence. He's there to guide the team. And of course, having a technical manager is sometimes great, but other times it could also be a blocker because maybe they haven't touched code in years. Maybe the closest they get to it is maybe a code review, right? And so they understand some of the concepts and nuances, but maybe they don't understand some of the newer stuff that you're touching. And so I think that's like a good reminder. If you're leading a team, you might not necessarily need to be there for the technical aspect, but it kind of comes down to this, right? Like, why are you not getting hired? What are some of the pitfalls and downfalls? And honestly, one of the main things that I'm even thinking about, or one of the main comments, the guy said, I've been unemployed for 2.5 years. And when he was kind of listing out all the things that he's been doing, he's going through the effort of trying to get coffee chats, but he gets turned down constantly. And it's just a whole hot mess. And so I won't say this person's name. I don't want to put them on blast. And it's not really their fault, in my opinion. But I thought, why not take this episode today to start talking about less of like, here's the checklist of things to do. I think we've already covered that in an episode not too long ago. But more so like the mental strategies around it. And I think this is going to be like a big wake-up call for a lot of people, in my opinion. I can kick it off if you want to kick it off. What do you feel like?
Oh, I said, go ahead. Yeah, kick it off because you had that experience with them. So I think there's some things top of mind for you.
There's definitely some things top of mind. And so with this individual, he's like, oh, I've been reaching out for coffee chats and people are turning me down. And so for me, I'm very big on auditing your effort, right? I constantly audit myself. I remember I was in a call earlier today where I was talking with the lead over this item. And he said, one of the last times we talked, you said you didn't know if XYZ was worth the effort. How do you feel about it now that like one of the big milestones has just been passed? I said, I still don't know if it's worth the effort. Like, we're putting in a lot of effort, right? I'm constantly auditing reward for effort. And if it's balanced, or if my reward is higher, I know we're in a good situation. If the effort outweighs the reward, you have to constantly think about like, well, is this reward leading to something else that it could be attached to or not? That's kind of the way that I look at it. And so for a lot of people, they just kind of go through the motions. And like this person in particular, when I said straight up, you're telling me you've been trying to get coffee chats for months and months and months and you're just getting turned down, please send me a DM right now as if you were trying to reach out for a coffee chat. Let's just be 100% authentic. Yeah. And it was like, hey, I really liked your profile. I'd love to set up a coffee chat with you. And I'm like, why would this work? Assuming we're strangers, we've never interacted, we've never talked. Why would I ever be interested in talking to you like that? Like, what do I get out of it? Like, where's the incentive there? I don't know anything about you.
And worse, you're using the red flags. I like your profile, or I saw your profile. Every spam message I get in my inbox is, hey, I love your business, or hey, I love your profile, hey, I love your Twitter account, right? And then some sort of ask. So we've all been trained to not only not reply, but to instantly ignore any message that starts like that. And so I think this leads to like one of the first big strategies, right? Like, I love that you said audit your effort, right? Like, you should always be auditing your effort. And sometimes you need a little bit of an outside perspective, right? If you're starting to see big trends, like I've been reaching out over and over and over and over again, nothing good's coming my way, and I don't see the reason why, you need somebody to take a look at what you're doing and so they can bring up that red flag. Interesting. Okay.
I'll tell you this, that I was given a task not too long ago where I had to reach out to like old clients, and I had sent like 80 messages and I didn't receive any reply. And I immediately was like, something's not right. Like, there's no way. And so I jumped on a call with 3 other people within my org. I'm like, can you please audit this for me? Like, where is the process going wrong? And we adjusted a couple of things, and I sent out 40 more, had 20 calls. Like, that adjustment, that's all it needed. Yeah. And so sometimes taking a step back to look at it, to readjust, to try something else will always be perfect. But I'll say this, like put yourself, whenever you're sending out a message, like put yourself in the seat of the receiver and constantly think, I know nothing about this person.
Yep.
Would I reply to this? And I think this is actually the one thing I even say about being popular on social media. I genuinely believe almost anyone can have, if they wanted to, like it comes down to want. But if your goal was like, I want to grow a social media profile, there's no reason why you can't have an audience of like 5,000 people on Twitter if you wanted it. Like if you truly, truly want it. The biggest hurdle most people have is taking their idea and explaining it in a way where if you have zero context and you just see that tweet, you can then understand what it is that person is sharing. Yeah. Often they just leave out so much context that you couldn't even engage with it if you wanted to. But you're operating under that idea of that underlying aspect of, oh, I know why this is happening, why this is working, et cetera, et cetera. When it comes to the coffee chat thing, it's the same thing. I would never, ever lead in immediately with the request for coffee chat. Like there has to be something there. And to give you an idea, and I think I've mentioned this previously, with our cohort, one of the requirements for the cohort is every single student, or a cohort member rather, has to have a minimum of 5 coffee chats in order to stay in there. And they're not allowed to ask for it in Discord. They must go through social media channels and reach out that way. But there's no compulsion to ask. So people have been already rejected for coffee chats. People have been accepted for coffee chats. I have one person in particular who's done 22 coffee chats, right? He's killing it. He's loving it because he's meeting so many people. And fun fact, we have one team that's dedicated in Nigeria. It's the first time we've ever done this. That's cool. Even they are reaching out to people in the American teams and getting coffee chats. They've had to audit, like change things up because, maybe they're taking certain things for granted. You could definitely tell they've learned a lot in their approach in this, but they're getting the coffee chats. And so it comes down to like, how are you building up that relationship, the rapport? How are you connecting? How are you messaging them? There's so much that goes into this. And so if you're getting rejected continuously for coffee chats, something is completely off. But the other thing is, if you're using a platform like, let's say, LinkedIn, in my opinion, regardless of what anyone says, there's no platform in the world that I know of that is positioned the way LinkedIn is. Meaning people are there because they want to grow their careers, or they're established in their career and they kind of want to keep networking growing, etc. LinkedIn shared stats not too long ago. It's even in my LinkedIn course. I can't remember the exact number off the top of my head. I should have researched this, but I believe it's like 70+% of people on LinkedIn earn over $80,000 a year. So it's not like, wow. And when you consider the entire country, like you can't just consider like New York and California, cost of living so high. But when you consider the entire country as a whole, for example, like Memphis, Tennessee, 80 grand is fantastic. Yeah. When you're in certain cities like that, 80 grand is fantastic. That means these aren't people that just started their careers. For the vast majority, they're going to be established individuals that have been there for a while. So you're networking with professionals, but they're all there with the same intent. We just want to keep getting better, doing better. They're there to network. Why not leverage that? But for me, the biggest thing when it even comes to your LinkedIn profile, and I'll just say it like this, right? When I DM somebody or someone DMs me and we've never interacted before, I've never seen a like from them, a comment from them, we've never gone back and forth in anything. What do you think is one of the first things that I would do or they would do if I message them? They check out your profile. Your profile, if it's set up properly, helps increase the rate of replies. It increases the likelihood that they'll even acknowledge your message. Yep. And so it just helps you. And so if you have a bare bones empty profile and you're messaging people and there's no context there, number one, they don't even know if you're real or not. But number two, if I wanted to have a conversation with you, I don't even know what I would ask you. And that's like one of the problems that I have with some of the resumes that are coming through right now, even for like we're hiring for roles right now for React Native. These resumes, I'm like, I don't even know what to ask this person. Yeah. Like I would have to figure it all out when they come in for the interview.
So I'm going to give my advice I give to folks. And I want you to, I guess, maybe react to whether you think it's good or not and what you would change about it. Because I think you've identified like a really important problem here, right? Leon, you say networking is the way folks are getting jobs right now. I'm trying it on LinkedIn. It's not working. What do I do? Right? We've already talked about like getting someone to audit your message to make sure that it's not something completely off the wall. And now we're also talking about like, how is your profile set up so that people actually want to respond? So I want to kind of like drill down a little bit and then be like, all right, if this is the problem you're having, hey, I realize I want to network my way in. What should I be doing? Here's what I would tell the person listening. All right. First thing, realize that on LinkedIn, not everyone responds. And so you have to give yourself some grace. Some people that are using LinkedIn only use it when they're actually on the job hunt, right? Or when they are actively looking for roles. So you might just not get a response to someone, even if you're doing something perfect, because they're not checking their email tied to their LinkedIn. Happens a lot. So you always want to give yourself grace when going into any of these like strategies or like the hunt. Like it could be perfect and just might not work. So with that being in mind, it's a numbers game. The more numbers in that you're taking action, you're auditing your effort, like Danny says, the better outcomes you can get out. So what are you doing from the beginning? I am identifying people at the companies that are actively hiring, ideally locally. So I'm going to look at every single company that's hired in the past 3 months that I think has roles that I might be a good fit for. I use something called Hit List Magic. It's just a Boolean search in Google to find the job postings of all the companies. I add them to a list. I'm now going to try and find 3 to 5 people that work at each of those companies that's going to go on this list. I'm not going to message these people right away. I'm going to follow them if I can, and I'm going to start engaging with their content. I'm going to like something. I'm going to leave a comment on something, and I'm going to do this for as long as I can possibly do it. That's why I think you should start this stuff really early, like when you're still learning. But if you're like, hey, Leon, I lost my job, I'm actively hunting, I still think you should warm up your leads somewhat, a week or two, because you're still building out the list. You're building out all the people. You're taking some blocks of time each day to do this. Engage, warm, everything. Then once you've warmed up a little bit, you're going to send your message to this person. That message has one of 2 strategies. One, it's a very value or person driven message that the person would actually reply to, or it's a more generic message that you're sending, but at way larger scale. The personal message, I'm trying to find anything, any nugget, anything that's like personal about that person. Danny has pickleball aficionado in their title on LinkedIn. Your message better include something about pickleball. They've made it such an easy layup for you to talk to them and pique their interest. You can find that somewhere else in their profile. You can find that on their other social media that might be connected. And if you're like, Leon, I can't find anything on LinkedIn, I can't find anything on Twitter about this person, they're incognito, great. Find a different person. It's hard work. It's a lot of work. You're building out a massive list, hundreds of people that should be on it. Great. You've warned them. You send that message. It's personable, has something they care about, and then you make your ask, hey, we'd love to take 10 minutes just to learn more about your journey, right? Boom, you send that message. The other message you could send is a direct. Hey, I love what you're doing at this.dev. I'm someone that's earlier in their career journey. I know you help a lot of folks online. I hope I can be one of those people. And that's like a very simple message that you're sending out, but more at scale. It's targeting their company, something that could be a little bit more generically applied to most people, that they're helpful, and you send that out. Then you follow up. Most people send one message, they hear nothing back, and they just like think that lead is lost and they go somewhere else. No, your odds are going to increase with each follow-up, right? It's with each engagement. And for sometimes if the LinkedIn doesn't work out, you have to try a different platform, but we're going to stay on LinkedIn. Great. That's my message strategy. One other thing I'll add about the profile. In your profile, look like someone that's hireable. Have a good background, have a good title, have activity that shows you're a real person. You know how many messages we get from somebody that has 0 activity on LinkedIn, that has nothing going for it, that we just assume is a bot, right? If you have added these people to a list, you've warmed them up, they've seen the likes, they've seen the comments, they have somewhere back in their brain who you are. You have a profile that looks like a real person, that has activity, that has who you are, what you've done, the things that you've worked on, and you send a personal message, your odds of getting a reply are so much different. I think people lose a lot of that insight when they're just sending a message. All right, what did I do wrong, Danny?
Yeah, I don't think you did anything wrong. So I only add a couple things. I think that message is fine. There's a couple things that I would say. Number one, remember, the higher up the list of positions that you go, the harder it is for people to make that time. And the way that I equate this is, let's say somebody makes, on average, let's go ahead and go with like easy math. Let's say they make around like $200 an hour, right? If you separate that by 60 minutes, that means they were roughly making $3.50 an hour per minute, okay? So that means if they do a 10-minute call with you, that's $35 that they just gave up. If they do a 20-minute call with you, that's $70 worth of their time, right? The higher up you go, the harder it is for that ask. So it's like, and then the other thing is, if you're going for someone who has like a massive social media following, they're getting a ton of DMs regularly. They're getting a ton of messages regularly. Unless they just have this high priority to talk to juniors, it's really hard to make that time. So if you're allocating this much effort, try to find people that may not necessarily be quote unquote influencers. Yeah. Try to find people that are maybe smaller in the following, where they just post occasionally. They're going to have a higher likelihood of actually reading that message if it comes in. That's number one. Number two, one extra thing that I do to this step is I really leverage LinkedIn search filters, meaning there are several things that you can do. And this is kind of like, what I do, right? So for example, let's say, give me a company name that you like. It could be anything. It doesn't matter.
This.labs.
This.labs. Perfect. I love that company too. Just so happens that I'm a big fan of them. If I were to go on LinkedIn right now and type in this.labs, and I were to go to posts, right? I can go to posts, and now I can do date posted by, and I can filter by the past 24 hours, the past week, the past month. So if I were to do the last 24 hours, that means this was a very real recent post. So if I comment on this, high likelihood that they're going to see it. It's not going to be something that was like a month ago. It's yesterday or today. And so when I sort it by that and I show the results, I'm getting all these posts from an hour ago, 2 hours ago, 3 hours ago. I can now comment on that and be one of the first things that they see. And so for me, I used to be really, really big on just sending blind DMs. But the problem is I spend a lot of effort, even like the effort that you were allocating and describing there. And if they ghost it, that effort had no success in any way, shape, or form. But what if my first interaction with that person is a comment? And let's say that person has 1,000 followers, right? So not like a massive following of like 100,000, 200,000, but 1,000 followers. I think 1,000 is pretty reasonable for like the average engineering manager or recruiter or somebody like that's active on LinkedIn. That means when I comment on that post, theoretically, their audience will see that one comment. So instead of it being a 1-to-1 relationship and ratio, it's now a 1-to potential of 1,000, right? And then if this post goes viral, maybe 100,000 people see it, 200,000 people see it, maybe a fraction of that number sees it, but it's still greater than the number one, right? And the thing that is important here is I can't comment something like, really great, oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Nobody cares about that. But if somebody were to talk about, maybe they listened to our previous episode on React 19 and they're like, you know what? I just learned to use optimistic hook because Danny and Shruti and Leon were talking about it. And so you know what they did? They made a post on it. Well, I could go in there and talk about like, I actually just recently built a project and utilized this hook. And the way that I implemented was this, this, and this. Did you find any weird use cases, or did you find any weird like situations that you had to like overcode or over engineer a solution in a certain way? Because I had trouble doing this. Or you could talk about how you had trouble and how you got past it. You've added so much value to this conversation. Yeah. And so now anybody that's reading the comments, they're going to really engage with it. And now if the author of that post engage with it, and then I end up in their DM, there's a way higher likelihood that they're going to kind of interact with me now, because they're like, oh, wow, I've already seen that this person is like a developer. They know their stuff. We're interacting, we're engaging, we're networking. Seems cool. Yeah, I'm going to reply to this. Like there's nothing weird here. Yeah. And so that increases your likelihood a lot of them replying. But the other thing is, by using that search filter, I can go up like by the week, by the last 24 hours. I can now see at least they're active on the platform for the most part. So when I go to their profile, I can see quite a bit of stuff. I can learn quite a bit about them since they just posted something. And so when my DM is now more meaningful, more accurate, there's a higher likelihood that things are going to go in the favorable direction that I want to do. Yeah. And so I would build rapport. And so in the example that you gave about pickleball, right? I put that there as an easy layup for people that want to kind of reach out. not everyone's that generous, right? But like I'm very, very big on volunteering. Like my family, we still volunteer every single week. It's kind of like a big thing. It's been a big way for me to kind of like even keep my son with the mindset of like, hey, volunteering is not just good for the community, but it's good for yourself. It's good for your soul. Yeah. It's good for like, there's so much benefit. And I really like the fact that he's kind of enjoying it and kind of gathering towards himself towards it. And he sees like the bigger picture and the bigger good with it. But for me, I would look at somebody's profile, and if they're volunteering somewhere, I'd be like, you know what? I volunteer at XYZ. I see that you're volunteering at ABC instead. Like, can you tell me some stuff about that? I would really love to know more about there because maybe I'd want to go volunteer there for a weekend or something like that. Because I volunteer here, it's kind of always met my schedule, and I really love the mission. And I volunteered also at DEF, and I've had a great time there. Can you tell me a little about ABC? If someone is in volunteering, they're going to gush about that. Like that's an easy win to kind of get them talking. Plus, especially if it's something that you really like, that's an easy conversation every single time.
Yeah. You can identify that like true passion, that thing that someone really cares about. There's no way you're not getting a response. I also love I guess I was calling it warming, but I never thought of the warming as being a one-to-many. And so you're not, like, it's actually a better use of your time, that warming period, because you have more opportunities that for other folks to see it. I think that's huge. Now, I do want to say something. I think we've given a lot of like very actionable pieces of advice here. And these are kind of our worst performing episodes. I think we reveal like the secrets, but the secrets are like a lot of hard work. And then people kind of just like, boop, and they disappear. So I want to take a moment to like talk about that, because what I want people to figure out is that there are ways to get an advantage in the job search process. The things that we're mentioning, you don't have to do. You might still get lucky, but these are things that you can actually do right now that tip the odds more and more in your favor. And we're never going to say to do all of them, but it's part of our job, I think, with this podcast to show you how the game is being played. Realize that you're going up against folks that are doing this and are making time for it. And so when your job search is not going the way you want it, you have to realize that there are people out here playing the game to this level. And what are you going to do to have a competitive advantage? Right. And so we've given you the things that we think are going to be competitive advantages. And now it's taking the time and energy to follow through. And it's okay to give yourself some grace. It's okay to build up to it, but it's a numbers game and it's an advantage game. And what are you doing to tip the scales in your favor?
Man, I can't believe you said that out loud, because we've been talking about this for weeks. And so spoiler to the listeners, we look at the analytics a lot because obviously we want to keep improving this. And every single time there's an episode where we start giving actionable things people can do, it almost dispels the idea like there's some magic formula that people are just searching for. And it almost immediately takes a nosedive. And so we've theorized, we've hoped that maybe people hear the actionable things and they just immediately jump to it. But then the other side is maybe they found out it's not a smooth walk in the park and they just get, let me find that little source of almost supporting the feedback that they want to hear versus actual feedback. Yeah. And it kind of keeps them in the same habit. But the reality is there are people that are doing this. I get approached by them frequently. In the cohort right now, we have 150 people that are doing this, and they're making actionable results that you can literally see. Like I constantly get comments from them saying, Danny, I've never used my calendar like this. I've never reached out to people. I've never had these kinds of conversations. I've never seen my network grow so fast. And it's there. Like the proof is there. Yep. It's not something magical or hidden. And so I kind of want to definitely jump into one extra area here, but I will say this, that if you find yourself having trouble getting conversations with people at a higher level, so maybe senior devs, maybe engineering manager, whatever it may be in that hierarchy, get some with the people on your same level. Like reach out to another junior that you know doesn't have a job in tech, if you're trying to get your first job in tech, and have a conversation. If you can't have a conversation with that person and they're in the same situation that you're in, I think that's a very clear indicator that you're doing something very obviously incorrect. But also, I wouldn't put, I was going to say, I wouldn't put all my eggs in one basket of like, I reached out to one person, they have to say yes. It's a numbers game. You got to reach out to more than one person.
We're talking hundreds, not one. Hundreds. And the last thing I'll say too is you don't have to start this on your own. There's so many communities that actively are working on these things, right? You can join cohorts that Danny puts on. You could join 100 devs with me. Like you can join folks that are actively practicing these things so you get better at these skills. You know, have someone look at your messages all for free. Like you can do it. So make sure you're joining those communities to get those gut checks, to get the motivation to keep pushing. We've been live every day except for Wednesdays for the past month. 400 plus people on a Discord call every single day. And we're getting 5+ people every single call that are actively getting interviews and getting jobs. It's pretty much all last week. Every single day, somebody got a job. Multiple people got jobs and multiple people getting interviews every single day. And so if you are just in an echo chamber of negativity online, find some positivity spaces as well. Because I think a lot of times people hear this actionable advice, and the thing that we tell ourselves is, it's even if I do it, it's not going to work out. So get yourself into a space where there is some positivity, where people are putting these tips and strategies into practice and they're seeing the results of that labor. If you're just seeing negativity, I get it. I understand why you just click off and go do something else. So make sure you're getting these spaces where you can see people winning, people getting the offers, people telling you boots on the ground what's actually working. If you don't have a community yet, you should join one of ours.
Yes. So kind of moving into the other space, coffee chats and all that are great. Getting those conversations are very valuable. The other thing I really want to touch on is mindset around certain things. And so, for example, when it comes to your LinkedIn, your resume, the ways that you're reaching out, before you reach out to that person, like this is the one thing that I always tell like beginners, like, I know that you're amazing and you know that you're amazing. But you have this very incredibly difficult task to get someone to understand you, comprehend you, based off of the information that you're providing them. When you reach out to somebody or when you apply to a job, they are not hiring a private investigator to go be like, Danny just applied to this job. Yeah. Go find out everything about this person. They get your message, they get your LinkedIn, they get your resume. That's about it, right? Like that's what you gave them to go off of. And so the one thing I want to really start like pressing upon, and like this is actually information that I always pretty much saved for one-on-one calls, right? And there's a big reason for that, because we all know that there are quite a few people out there that they literally listen for what we say and they'll go make all this content around it. I won't even lie. We made one episode 2 weeks ago that we finally published, and not even a different day. It was the same day of publishing, because we publish at 6 a.m. At 1 p.m. on TikTok, I saw the video go up, and I could not believe it. It was like, there's no way this is he used my exact quote. I'm like, there's no way that this is a coincidence. But I will give this one. I as long as they put it out for free, I'm happy. But it's like when they put it behind a paywall, they charge for it, that's when I start getting hot. But when it comes to this stuff, you need to start thinking more along the lines of, what conversations do I want gained from this? But what do I want the person walking away knowing about me? Like, you can't look at your LinkedIn and resume, even the message, as like a checkbox item. It's like, what do you want them walking away feeling, knowing? If they don't even ever reply to you, what would you hope that they walk away with? Because maybe if you meet this person in person, can you recall that? Can they remember you favorably? Or, what happened to me not too long ago? I had interacted with somebody at an event, and when they went to DM me, they realized I had reached out to them in the past and they didn't reply. And they're like, oh, I didn't realize I missed this message from you. I'm glad that we connect. This is such a great message. And we started a conversation based on a message I sent months ago. Yeah. So it's like, if you leave this in a good position, they walk away favorably, like it can only feed back into that conversation later on. So it's like, what do you want them actually walking away with? And I can tell you right now, that one question, and 99.9% of my one-on-ones, it is always met with, I have literally never thought about that.
And it's the only shot you get too. And it's formed so quickly. If you want to put this advice into action, take your resume, take your LinkedIn, and just start with those two things. Go to anyone you know, your friend, your mama, your coworker, put the resume in front of them and give them 6 seconds to read it. At the end of the 6 seconds, take the resume back and say, what do you know about me from this resume? And they'll be like, your name? Great. That's what a recruiter knows about you in the 6 seconds that they spend on your resume. Because sometimes you put your resume, you put your name, then your address, then your phone number, then your email, and they're reading in an F-shaped pattern. They don't get to anything about you. Now give them back the resume and say, all right, mama, I want you to take a minute and I'm going to take it away and I want you to tell me everything you remember about who I am and whether or not you would hire me. Give them the full minute, take it back and say, what do you remember about me? What have I done? And if they can't tell you something, if there's no theme, if they don't know that you're a software engineer that's done X, Y, and Z, there's something wrong with your resume that you can fix. You do the same thing with your LinkedIn. Give them 10 seconds to look at it. What do they know about you, right? There are things that you can do, words that you can repeat that if it's set up right, people will see software engineer, software engineer, software engineer. So the first keyword they should say is software engineer. So many people we talk to, it's not that. I have an interest in cats, and so I want to start a cat rescue. And then like they don't ever get to the software engineering piece. And then you look at the titles on their LinkedIn or the titles on their resume, the software engineer piece is like far off to the right-hand side. So all I see is cat rescue, but I don't know that you're a software engineer at it. And I'm not going to give you the time of day to form that opinion. You get one shot. It's formed in seconds. And you have to make sure everything is correct. It looks good. It reads right. It's understandable, because people that are doing this for a living are only giving you so much time to cycle through it. And if they have to work to find these things out about you, like Danny's saying, they're not going to do it. They're just going to move on to another candidate that's going to present themselves in a way that they can understand. And they could be worse. They could have worse projects. They could have, I think of that meme, whack, LinkedIn whack, Twitter whack. Like, it could be worse in every single way, but it just they put it on a platter, and they're tired. It's the end of the day. They have to look at 3 more candidates, and somebody serves it up. That's who they're going to go with. So please, for the love of everything, just take your stuff and show it to somebody else so they can see the things that you're not seeing. Let them tell you what they see to tell you whether or not you're passing that check. And so many folks that we do one-on-ones with don't pass that very, very baseline level. And it's such an easy check that you could do right now.
100%. And I'll even say this, taking one step further, if you are early career, so like maybe you maybe have had one job in your life, or maybe your entire background has not had anything to do with tech, and so you're a career transitioner. One of the most powerful things you can use is your summary statement. And your summary statement should not be used to explain what it is, like, oh, I'm a construction worker trying to transition. Like, that's the worst thing you could put. You need to talk about your relation into the role that you're going for, especially when you don't have that tech experience. Because if your experience section just says, here are all these projects that I made, and then it says construction workers, barista, etc., that doesn't tell them anything. But if your summary statement says something along the lines of like software engineer with budding projects and intellectual property, et cetera, just whatever it is.
Yep.
But at least it sets the tone for them to realize, okay, this is a person that's trying to go professional in software development, right? So whatever their previous experience is, let me not look for it for the technical acumen, but let me see whatever other things that they've applied there. But if you literally put barista and you made coffee, like, I know you made coffee. Like, I could have assumed that. There are certain
Danny,
things
your roof is leaking.
Yeah.
Do you want to hire the person that's aspiring to be a roof builder or the roof builder?
To be honest, I want the shoe repairman. No,
the shoe repairman that's transitioning into roof repair, right?
Yeah.
And so it's just absurd to me that, like, yes, those stories are important. They're things that you can bring up when you're meeting real people. But when you have a recruiter that's trying to hire a professional, they don't want to hear about. They want to be, if I bring this person and I put them in front of the nerds, they're going to ask them technical questions. Do I look bad for having referred this person that's transitioning from the cat rescue? Right? No, they want to find a professional that can fix a problem, that can solve a real need. So if you're a professional, treat yourself like a professional. Doesn't mean that the story's not important. Doesn't mean that it doesn't come up in certain areas. But if I'm giving you 6 seconds and my roof is leaking, I want the person that can build a roof, not the person that's aspiring to build roofs.
Yep. I actually have data on this. There was a study that was done that showed for like actual recruiters and hiring managers the number of times that they put in terms like aspiring software developer. Do you know what that number was? 0. Never. They've never done that ever. They've never. Literally never did the hiring manager wake up and was like, you know what would be great to add to the team? An aspiring software developer. Aspiring. We don't want the one that's already confident. No. We want the one that's still trying to gain the confidence to call themselves the thing that they are. And I'm not saying go over here and lie about the thing. But you know what's funny? If I were to say, you know, I'm a carpenter, like I can build you a shelf, right? I would never say I'm an aspiring carpenter. I hope to build a shelf. Like, I've built it. I've got it. A bunch in my garage that I could showcase to you. Yeah. Editor, can we put a picture of a shelf in his hands right there? That's exactly how it goes. And so don't put aspiring. If aspiring is anywhere on your profile, I can tell you right now that's probably a big reason why you're not getting clicks, not getting hired. I will say the last thing that I'll say is when it comes to the story or narrative around what you can do and your abilities, brag. Like, there's a whole thing on social media where it's like humble brag. Oh my God, this is the place to do it. They don't know anything about you and they want to see the bragging. Hiring is about what are the brags so we can be excited about this employee. If you keep burying the lead, you're doing yourself a disservice. And when it comes to your LinkedIn and your resume, your very first bullet point every single time needs to be the best bullet point that you have for that role. For some reason, and I don't know why, it seems like, and I've reviewed probably 5 to 10,000 resumes at this point, if I'm being not even generous, but probably, you know, on the lower end of side of things. Now we're talking about 7 years, but just for whatever reason, it always seems like their best bullet point is the last one. Like they need to build up the suspense. I can tell you right now,
applications using agile methodologies, number one.
I don't understand the whole build-up part, and I don't think they're doing it intentionally, or maybe they are. But the reality is, if it's not a home run on the first one, it's so hard to keep them hooked to watch to the end. They don't owe you the time just because you applied, and so you need to incentivize them. You need to hit a home run to where they're like, "Whoa, I need to find out more about this. What do they do here? Let me kind of dig down deep." And then if they're able to even develop questions around that, guess what? If they ask you those questions in an interview, how are you going to possibly fail that interview?
I like that we're right here, man, because I was going to say there's no humbleness on the hunt. There's no room for the I don't want them to feel like I'm being a little too braggadocious. No, that's the damn point. We want to know what you did, what you've done, the metrics behind it, why you're the hottest thing since sliced bread, and why I, as a recruiter, am not going to get in trouble when I put you in front of the hiring team, right? Like that's it. Give me your best. This is the one chance in life where there's no need to hold back, no need for the humbleness. It's not going to serve you. And so many people just can't carry that into the interview process. And so we're not trying to get on folks here. We're just trying to help you see the things that I think a lot of folks just overlook. They're too humble. They don't talk about themselves in a positive light. They're afraid of maybe misleading someone, but no, it's just that you are a professional. You've put the time and energy to learn these things, to build these things. Put your best foot forward. Show them the things that you can build. Show them the things you can do. Talk about yourself in the most positive light, because if you're not going to do it, no one else will. And so many other people that probably have less skill, less experience, but are not afraid to put their best foot forward, are going to step right over you and into a job.
Yeah. And I think the last area we can glaze on real fast is interview strategy. And so we're not going to really go through the whole strategies, but the one thing I really want you to think about is, and it's like 3 bullet points. It's like technical interviews aren't just technical. Notes worth taking. And the last one that I will say is that if you aren't giving them a reason to talk, they won't. All right. So what does that even mean? Number one, technical interviews aren't technical, only technical, meaning they're evaluating a ton of things in there, right? And so I can tell you right now, as someone that has led many technical interviews, been a part of technical interviews, and given technical interviews, you know what's the first thing that happens after the devs leave that technical interview? The hiring manager and technical manager end up reaching out to them via Slack or Teams. It's like, how did that go? then they're going to reference the notes that they gave them, right? Like, this is what happened, this is what they did, la da da da, and the impression. If you don't give them stuff to talk about, they're not going to have something favorable to say about you. The other thing that I'll say is, when it comes to the technical, they can say whether you got the right or wrong answer. But if they're in there with you, they're actually in there to evaluate what your problem solving process actually looks like. Like, they can determine whether you know a data structure, an algorithm kind of question and answer process. But if you're not talking through it, if you're not explaining it, if you're not asking questions to kind of show them where you're thinking about, they have nothing to go off of. And so they just have to go off of whether you got the right or wrong answer. And so then when people are like, oh, I bombed this question, well, it's like, did you at least show them how you were approaching it and how you were solving it and talk through it? I always say, think out loud. That's like my biggest tip when it comes to technical interviews, especially if they're in the room with you. Think out loud. Second point, notes worth taking. Whenever an interview happens, they're taking notes to reference, and they're sharing those notes with the people that would theoretically do interview number 2, 3, 4, etc. If those notes aren't worth taking and worth sharing, they will glaze over it over the next 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 candidates. And they're going to go to the ones that have interesting notes to follow up on. They can give their recommendation of, I think you should probably talk to this person. But if they don't have anything to go off of a substance, you're getting skipped for somebody else. And the last one I'll say is, if you don't give them a reason to talk, they won't. Meaning, if you are not giving them questions back, if you are not asking them things, if you're not engaging with them, they won't. There's going to be a point where they're like, you know, I think this interview's up. I think I got enough. You will probably say like, oh, I probably killed it. For them, they're like, I'm so glad to finally be out of that conversation. And there was a stat, and I don't necessarily agree with it. I understand it, but I think it's foolish. To where I believe the number was around 80% or 85%, one of the two. I tweeted it out a long time ago, but I think it was 80% plus of employers literally said candidates that do not ask questions and engaging questions in the interview are probably not interested, which is foolish because like I wouldn't even be there if I wasn't interested. I wouldn't be wasting all this effort and time, but that is the way they think. And so if you're not in there asking questions, what are you doing to yourself? Like, you're killing yourself here. Like, give them a reason to talk. You're there to qualify yourself, but guess what? They're there to qualify themselves to you too. I'm about to spend the equivalent of the amount of hours I sleep in a week, give or take, here. Why the heck wouldn't I make sure this is the best fit for me? Now, I understand, and I'll get in debates on this, especially on Twitter, where it's like, for your first job, just take anything. I kind of disagree, mainly because like, I genuinely believe my first job set up my entire career. And so I'm grateful that I was very picky, but I understand we're also in a market where you may not necessarily have that luxury. But I would say is at least ask some of the prerequisites that you feel like you need to make sure that this is the job of your dreams.
Retweet everything. I think there's a lot of things here that we're trying to point to this idea that impressions matter, vibes matter. And it's a big part of whether or not you make it to following rounds, right? Did you engage with the person? It's communication, it's collaboration. It's not just the code that's going to make that person rate you favorably, leave good notes about you. And it's one of those things that we just see time and time again that people kind of forget is part of the equation. And so I hope as you've been listening to this episode, there's at least a few things that you're like, wait a minute, I haven't been thinking about this. I haven't been looking at this. I hope that you're not critical. I hope you're analytical. I hope you look at the things you're doing. I hope you decide to make some changes. You test those changes with other humans so you can see the things that you might not be noticing. We get some sort of sensory adaptation over time to where like we don't see the small things, but it's a bunch of these small things that actually matter. What people perceive, what people feel, what people see, all come down to a lot of these small little things coming together into a wonderful being that is you. And the cool thing is that each one of these little things are in your control. You can work to improve it. And if you commit to some sort of schedule of improving these things, you get to the other side. You get to the point where you're getting good interviews, you're getting good opportunities, you're getting good jobs now and forever. All right, we got a question here. What website/job board should I use to search for jobs besides LinkedIn/Indeed?
Do you want to answer this first? I have a whole take on this, so it's up to you.
Sure. So I think every location has their like own local job boards that you should be looking for, right? So you should make sure you're not missing out like on the big ones, like also the local ones. Local startup ones are important. Of course, there's other big players in the job boards, but my advice is to kind of not worry about individual jobs on job boards. I think if you're focused on that, you've already missed most of them, because a lot of companies aren't posting on these boards, or they open and they're only open for 24 hours and you've missed it. So I use the job boards for like macro level ideas of like who's hiring. They get put on a list of folks I'm networking into and trying to find like actionable roles through. And the other thing that I do is I use something called Hit List Magic, which will be on our website, which will be live when this episode drops.
I hope so.
Yeah, it'll be live when this episode drops. And so I'll link my Boolean search that I put into Google that targets the sites people use to host their jobs, not the job boards themselves. So like, where do you put like all the stuff about your job? So it finds all those postings, and then that I type that in, I put it back for like a month, and I find all the actual job openings, not just with the postings that are going on the job boards. Those are the two things that I do.
So here's my theory on job boards. When you went to that job board, especially like if we're talking junior roles, right? Like, but it's pretty much for all roles, but especially for junior, like when you search junior roles, you see some of the same ones, like, you know, like this coding boot camp that's really trying to hide it, or like this contracting firm that's really trying to hide it. But when you went there and you entered that search, did you put your credit card information in there? No. So that means you're not the thing that they're monetizing, which means when a company posts a job on that job board, they're paying to post it. Why would they have to pay to advertise a junior role? They know once they post it, like 1,000 people are going to apply to that, right? Like, where's the incentive in paying for that? It's not really there. And so majority of companies, not all, I'm not going to blanket statement all, but I'd say the majority, they do two things. One, they go to their team and they literally say, hey, we're actually going to bring on a junior. Do y'all know anybody? Is there somebody that you recommend? Has there been somebody you met?
I'm shaking my head aggressively for folks not watching the video.
Yes. That right there is like a big indicator why you should be networking, meetups, and coffee chats, and et cetera, et cetera. Because that's literally every company I've ever worked at, that conversation has always come up. Hey, matter of fact, even right now, like for teams that I'm not even interacting with, I'll find out, oh, we're hiring a React Native dev right now. Do you know anybody? Comes up all the time in our team meetings. That's number one. Number two, they put it on their company career page. And the reason why they do that is it costs them absolutely nothing to put that there. They know that they will get a minute fraction of the number of applications, which, to be honest, is not a bad thing. But number two, they know if you found them from that company career page, you were actually looking for them for that role. They didn't pop up in SEO. They didn't pop up here. They popped up because you were like, hey, this is the company I want to work at. I looked on their career page and I found it. There's a higher likelihood that conversation will be far more favorable for them, even if you aren't an exact match on their criteria list. So they're more likely to jump in there. That's the two things there. And so for me, that's like strategy one. I map out the companies that I'm kind of interested in, or I know, like I've done my research and things like that. And I'm like, okay, I know right here, this is the company I want to be at. But number two, the thing that I would do is LinkedIn. And kind of like I said earlier with the search filters, I can literally put hiring as a keyword, and I can search in the past 24 hours, and I can see based on location who has made a post in the last 24 hours or the last week that they are hiring. That could be a great way for me to interact. Now, are those posts going to be exactly for my specific role? Probably not, but it kind of puts me on my radar, like, oh, this company's hiring for this and this company's hiring for that. You kind of see real indication, especially we're talking about 24 hours ago in real time. And then you can also see, like, did this post not get any engagement at all? Ooh, this is probably like a prime person for me to have a conversation with, because they posted about it and no one interacted. No one dropped a comment like, oh, I can send you my resume right now. You're primed up. So like those are the big indicators that I usually utilize. But of course, your network will produce the most opportunities that are great for you. And if they're advocating for you in rooms that you're not even in, you're winning half the time.
Love it.
All right, y'all. It's been another fun one, and we will see you on the next one. Goodbye, everybody.
Peace, y'all.